Advaita, hi.
Hi,
How are you doing this evening?
I'm well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, awesome. Can I just quickly ask you, can you hear me properly on your side?
Perfectly.
Okay, sound is good. All right. Okay, so much better. That's everybody is coming on um, to join us with this conversation. So obviously we're going to have a live audience, and then we're also going to have people that rewatch this later. And if any questions come during our conversation, whether it's now or afterwards, we will definitely hop in to have a chat. So listen, firstly, I want to say to you, thank you very much for putting aside very precious family time. I know that you've just got back from London, so the kids are probably have been missing you a lot. But I know that everybody in my community definitely is going to find the conversation very valuable with you.
It's a pleasure.
So
I live in fear of being like that guy who was on the BBC whose children,
yeah,
ran into the room. So let's just say it's going to add some texture.
absolutely, absolutely. So maybe Advita, just to kick off, I know that you are with Jack Hammer, so maybe you can tell us just a little bit about what Jack Hammer does and everything, and then we'll get into some recent research that you guys did.
Sounds good. Jack Hammer is an executive search firm. We are rated by Business Day as one of the top 3 executive search firms in the country. We're a boutique, started almost 20 years ago, and we work at C-suite and senior level, working on retained executive search. So if a company has a very specific position to fill, they would come to us and ask us to go out to the market and look for somebody to fill that role. So very different to a typical recruiter, which would sometimes represent a candidate who's looking for a job. Our clients are companies who are looking to fill executive positions.
Okay, so this is really interesting because so what you guys are basically dealing with is senior management inside organizations, right? Those are the positions that you are filling.
Yeah, that's pretty
Okay,
much it.
perfect.
We do
Perfect.
offer other services, a market sweep if a company is looking to understand what a competitor is offering, or understand a structure in a different company, or look for some interesting profiles if they're not necessarily ready to recruit, but our core function is executive recruitment.
All right, so that sets the tone. So, tell me a little bit about this research that you guys did in the South African context around remote work and all that. Just share those insights with us.
Sure. So just a little bit of background at Jack Hammer. Obviously, we do executive recruitment, but we also like to do market research as pertains to employment or human resources related issues in the country. And this is one of those things that piqued our interest, because we know it's an increasing global trend to allow people or to empower people to work remotely. And we were curious to see what the take up is in South African companies. Well, we had a sample representing more than 20 JSE listed companies, where we spoke to HR directors or senior HR professionals, asking them if remote working solutions are offered at their companies. And in about 80% of instances, those remote solutions were offered in some way, shape, or form. It does differ from company to company. And 50% of those companies said that people ask for it as early as job interview stage. So it's clearly something that's very important to the workforce, something that we need to sit up and take notice of. And that 20% that does not offer the solution said that they had job offers turned down as a result.
Wow, that's fascinating. So what you're saying is the sample that you guys looked at. You said 80% of those organizations were offering some form of remote or distributed teamwork.
Yes.
Wow,
so we know that. So
Go ahead.
carry on. No,
No, I'm saying that's quite.
Yeah, in the smaller companies, it's much easier to offer that solution and to offer it as a wholesale solution. So, sometimes people need not come into the office at all. In some of the larger companies, the corporates especially, it has to be a staggered sort of solution. So either somebody works 1 day a week from home, or they have reduced working hours, or they're expected to check into their emails at 10 o'clock at night after their children have gone to bed. But basically the functionality is there. It just really differs in the way it's offered.
You know, and it's so interesting that you mentioned that there was a percentage of people that had actually lost people because they didn't offer this. I must just tell you a quick story. So I was sitting, I got called in by a team, and they were wanting to, you know, with the work that we do, build a digital workplace which enables this kind of thing. And anyway, they said to me that the reason they were doing this is because there were some top people that they were wanting to get into the company. But the question that they were being asked was, you know, does this require me to actually, you know, sit in traffic and do that? And when the guy said, well, yeah, you have to come into an office, they said, well, you know, give me a buzz again once you've actually created a situation where I don't have to do that. You know, every day I can come in when it's necessary, but most of the time I don't have to be. Yeah. So that's pretty interesting. So can I ask you, from your research, what would you say, in your opinion, is the reason why this shift is happening, do you think?
So it's mainly driven by people themselves, people who are asking for it, because more and more we're realizing the value of a work-life balance, and nobody is productive after sitting for 2 hours in traffic. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that before, in order to work for a very successful big company, you had to live in a big city, and some people want to live and work from Neisner, like yourself. And the only way that that's going to happen is if there's a remote solution in place. And then on the company side, it actually does reduce infrastructure costs. I know there have been some American studies that have been done that says you can save up to $11,000 per year per employee if you have a remote working solution. And if you think about it, you know, you think about the types of things that you're spending your money on in an office environment. It's the furniture, it's the workstation, it's the facilities management, it's a parking spot. So, you know, having people work from home really lowers your infrastructure costs. And then in terms of productivity, I mean, it's slightly less tangible, but if a person is able to work at a time that suits them after they've done the school run, or, you know, some people are night owls, then you are just going to have better outputs for your company.
Absolutely. And, you know, this whole thing about productivity, I know the research now is beginning to show that those hours that people spend in traffic can actually have a knock-on effect during the rest of the day even. So, you know, I often say to people that, you know, for companies that don't allow these kind of solutions, what actually ends up happening is that while their workforce is sitting in traffic, their competitor is already at work getting on with the day, you know, which is interesting. Can I ask you, at Jackhammer, do you guys, obviously you have a remote working setup as well, right?
100%. Our CEO is based in Los Angeles. We have people who work from Durban, Joburg, Sedgefield, at various desks around Cape Town. At any given time, you'll probably find 4 or 5 people in the office. And the thing is, it's either the nature of their jobs or it's the personalities involved. I myself prefer to be in the office. I feel far more productive if I am, but most of my teammates prefer to work from home.
But obviously this flexibility, I know you're a mom, it does allow you to actually work around your children, right?
Absolutely. And that's, you know, one thing that can't be dismissed. And the thing is, you know, we assume that it's only moms that want that, but more and more it's dads, or, you know, it's people who just have different obligations to meet. If you need to spend 6 hours at Home Affairs every day to make sure a visa gets sorted out or something like that, you know, you absolutely need that flexibility, and different people have different priorities that need to be met.
Of course. And you know, this whole thing about having to ask for time off, you know, because your child is sick or because you want to attend some school event, you know, that those days, as a result of this way of working, are fast coming to an end, which really does create a better, as you said earlier, work-life balance for people, you know, especially with families.
100%. I think, you know, we've said at Jackhammer that managing remote teams or managing new teams requires a different skill set and a different mindset than people have had previously. And there is this old school mentality that bums in seats means work being done. But in high performance, outcomes driven organizations, it will be very clear who's pulling their weight and who's not, because there's a deliverable at the end of the day. And yes, certainly some people are not equipped to work remotely, either practically or just, based on their personalities. But that shouldn't apply as a blanket rule to an entire organization. Not if one person isn't able to work remotely, that doesn't mean his or her colleagues should have opportunity.
Okay, fantastic. I just want to take a pause here, and for everybody that has joined us after we got started, I just want to say a warm welcome to you. Hi, Jennifer and Sunette. I'll see you guys too. Remember, as we're having this conversation with Advaita around this research that Jack Hammer did related to remote work in the South African context, please ask it here, because this is the purpose of this whole conversation, is to actually be able to, tap into what the work they did and see what insights we can all garner from it. So you did mention, obviously, this whole concept now around, how productivity is measured, etc. So tell me a little bit, what must happen from a managerial level for something like this to work, do you think?
So we talk about practical implementation and cultural implementation. And I think because it's such a new thing, you have to be quite iterative in your application. So if you are going to embark on this journey of making remote working something that happens regularly at your company, first up, you should probably decide on a few non-negotiables. You have this framework in place. And if your non-negotiables are, we still need to meet face-to-face once a week, once a month, once a quarter, you set that down and you stick to that. Beyond that, you need to find what works for your company. So if somebody is going to be stuck in traffic for 2 hours to get to the office, maybe you can work around that. Maybe make it so that they work from home in the morning and come in the afternoon. Really be quite creative with what works for your company. Also, very practically, software is very important. So, nobody should have to dial into a server to download a file and work on it on their desktop and then re-upload it back to the server. There's so much tech out there that allows seamless working. It's Office 365, it's the Google Drive system. So, just explore the tech solutions that work. There's also project management software like Slack and Asana that really holds people accountable. It's more of a project management tool, but can be applied in situations like this. Also very practical things, like have a spreadsheet to track work, to make sure people are sticking to their deadlines. Have your Scrum meetings to make sure that the project is on track. Don't just wait until after it's due and and then say, oh, but you're working remotely, I assumed you were getting on with it. You do need to still have those same check-ins as you would in a water cooler situation in the office. You just have a quick, let's just have a quick roundtable about, the status of the project. So just apply those same things that you would do in the office, find a way to apply it remotely.
Perfect. That makes perfect sense. I must tell you something so interesting. So Apple, I think it was yesterday, or our morning anyway, they released this great ad, and it's called Apple at Work. And the story is of a group of people that they call the underdogs. So what I'll do after this, I'll actually on my profile, for those of you that are watching, I will actually share this. But it's a classic example of what Advaita just explained to us, that you need to have a well-designed digital workplace that allows this flawless working, whether you're sitting in a physical building and then leave that building and go and do something else elsewhere. You have to have that. We track, just as a matter of interest, we track what I call this new breed of company, and it's they refer to as remote only or remote first organizations. And the one that springs to mind immediately is an organization called Automatic, which basically owns WordPress. Now they have a team of about 800 people, and recently in San Francisco they just closed down their offices because they had quite a large office there, and they've closed it down because there were only 2 or 3 people that ever used to rock up there. Most of that team of 800 is spread around the world. So I want to ask you something about that. In your view, if you look at this way of working, what does this do for a company's ability to acquire talent?
So I think we've seen that in the tech space, it's something that is such a unique selling point that I don't want to apply a generational label to it, but millennials especially, who now make up almost 40% of the workforce, for them it's something that's very important. And those are, both the early adopters of tech and the drivers of tech. So in a tech situation, yes, definitely you are going to lose out on talent if you don't make this solution available. I think broader than that, in terms of talent acquisition, it's a conversation that needs to be had about any level of work or any function of work. If that's what your workforce is asking for, you're not doing yourself any favors by not listening to it.
So absolutely. So tell me, what are some of the drawbacks, do you think, from working like this?
Sure. Well, I mean, this is where we talk about the cultural implementation. And the first thing is that sometimes teams can feel disconnected. So I think, that's one of those things that needs to be on the non-negotiable list, that although we work remotely, we still do check in some way, so that people still feel like they know their colleagues. At Jackhammer, we have a system of checking in over email, where we share some stories about what's happening in our lives. So we're still remaining pretty in each other's lives, even if we don't see each other every day. I think on the cultural side, it needs to be that remote working is a value add, and it's a solution offered as a means to enhance productivity. The people working at home aren't the slackers who are on a holiday, and the people who are in the office aren't at an advantage or at a political advantage simply because they have access to better information or on-site information, or they have access to the boss just because the boss is in the office next door. Everyone should have the same access and the same opportunities.
I tell you, from as I said, that we track this because of obviously the mega trends related to the future of work, which is one of the things that we do. But a lot of the people were saying that what you need to ensure is that everybody in the team, regardless of where those people are, have an equal seat at the table. So I've been inside a company where they would have like a boardroom meeting, and then they would have like a video conferencing system in that boardroom, and then they would have like maybe someone who's elsewhere in the country, coming into that event. But in that setting, the guy who's on the screen is actually at a little bit of a disadvantage, because now the people that are sitting around the boardroom table are actually can see each other physically, and there's little glances that can be passed around that make up part of what a meeting is. And so the recommendation has always been that if you're going to have a meeting with a remote person, rather get onto something like Zoom or Skype or whatever your organization uses, so that everybody has got the same screen representation, and it feels better that way than having some people in a like face-to-face setting and someone on a screen who feels kind of divorced from that. Yeah. So I want to ask you, so in your view, like if you think about this whole concept of distributed teams, remote working, where do you see this heading in the future in the South African context?
So I think there are still some companies that are a little bit risk averse when it comes to remote working. The success hasn't actually been proven locally. So although we have these American figures of reduced infrastructure costs, nobody has sat down and said, well, here is the tangible increase in productivity that I've seen, or a company hasn't reported an increase in profits as a result. So we know that unless it drives the bottom line, a company may be less able to adopt it. There's also the case that corporates will find it difficult to scale a solution like this, especially if the tech hasn't existed from the beginning. If you have a workforce of 20,000, it's very difficult to then sort of work in a remote working solution. It is much more suited to a smaller, more agile business. So yeah, that's definitely something that needs to be considered. So I don't think that it's something that's going to be driven by the corporates so much, especially people, some companies already own their buildings, so their infrastructure costs while they're not as astronomical as a small startup would be facing if they had to go and rent space. So I think we will see more companies offering it as a solution. Whether it's a wide scale, company-wide solution, I have my doubts.
So there's a question here that I'd just like to read for you. What advice would you have for the more rigid work environment, healthcare sector? Is there space for some flexibility here, or does your research results only apply to specific industries and workspaces?
Sure. So, I mean, we work in the corporate space. So, of necessity, I think you would find in a field like healthcare or in any engineering type company, you do need some jobs can only be done on site. But in the healthcare field, there are probably some things that could be done with reduced working hours. So a person might not be offered a total remote working solution, but having a 10 to 3 in office, or working Fridays from home, that's certainly a viable solution, and you just need your managers to come to the party on that.
Absolutely. Well, listen, we are at 24 minutes into this conversation. It's been really great catching up with you. Can I just ask you, if people wanted to interact with you and reach out to you, where is the best place to do that socially? Is it LinkedIn or Twitter, or where are you most active?
LinkedIn would be a good place to start. Otherwise, they're welcome to email me. It's Advaita Naidoo. You could go onto our website, which is www.jhammer.co.za. But LinkedIn would be a good place to find me.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the link to your LinkedIn profile in the description of this video. I'll just edit it after we're done with that. I'll drop your email there too if people want to reach out to you, and obviously the Jack Hammer site, so that people can actually pay that a visit. So again, I just want to say to you, thank you so much for taking out your evening and having a chat to us, and I hope that in future we can perhaps catch up again to have a conversation about the evolution of this whole new way of working that's happening, and the possibilities this opens up.
Absolutely. I'll let you know when we put out our next piece of research.
Great. Thanks so much, and have a great evening. Thanks everybody for joining. And remember, we will continue the conversation in the comments afterwards as well. So great stuff. Have a great evening. Ciao, everyone.